Good afternoon, YouTube. I'm live and loud here in South Georgia, and it is ungodly hot today. I haven't looked at the thermometer, but I think it's in the 90s in the shade, which means it's got to be friggin' really hot out here, right? I'm already sweating, but that's all right, because sometimes it's hot out, all right? We need to train when it's hot, not when it is chill. Anyway, I'm here to tell you guys about a bunch of pieces of kit that aren't really guns and really not weapons per se. I guess this is definitely a weapon. I mean, you could definitely hurt someone with this, but these are primarily engagement area development and like living space improvers. These are a set of tools that you really should have. You can go down to Lowe's and pick most of these up for pretty cheap. And if you're not using these when you train, you are maybe foolish a little bit, unless you're super high speed, but not very many of us are, right? If you're a civilian fighter or you're in the Army or the Air Force and you do any kind of sitting in a DFP for a long time, you might as well have these tools to make your DFPs comfy, right? And if you guys like this, we might do a video in the future where I talk about building DFPs, or at least fighting positions of some kind. So let's begin. So we're gonna start with small tools that there's no excuse not to have on your person at almost all times, right? Things that can fit in your ruck. And we're gonna move up into bigger things that you might not have with you all the time, but you should consider having someone in your squad carry at the very least. Or if you're doing any sort of vehicle ops, you should have it mounted to the exterior of the vehicle. Starting off is going to be your issued e-tool, unless you're a civilian, in which case it's an unissued e-tool. I think these are probably like 30 bucks at an Army surplus store. This one's made by Gerber, and this is pretty much what we use these days. This folds in. Wow, that's burning hot. Tiny, right? Fits in a little pouch. You can put this on the exterior of your gear or in the big flap on the back of your Alice pack. And then when it's time to do something, you pull it out. You can either use it like this. Wow, freaking hot out. Twist it down. And that's for like hoeing up ground. I almost never do that. I like to be fully extended. You have a little notch right there. And this screws in. With your basic e-tool, you can create basic hasty scrape DFPs or even a somewhat fortified defensive fighting position. This isn't very long, about a meter, right? Or a yard for those of you who live in a country who went to the moon. Super handy tool, right? There's no reason to not have this with you. You got it issued for a reason. Very lightweight, what, maybe 3 pounds, probably less than 5 pounds. Super easy, put in the ground, dig stuff up. I don't want to mess up my yard, but you get the idea. But yeah, this is your base tool. It has a sharp end and a saw end. Never really used them. They kind of suck in my opinion. But for digging anything, nipple height and less, super handy. Within an hour, you should be able to create a pretty nice hasty scrape. And within 2 or 3 hours, 2 or 3 dudes should have a decent fighting position with grenade sumps. E-tool. Tool number 2, this is the Noble Hatchet. Hatchet small. Hatchet can fit either in something like this or a flap like that. This one happens to have a cool little nail puller. They don't all have that. Probably 4 or 5 inches of blade and a hammer on the back. I haven't ever been the biggest hatchet guy because it does everything the axe does but shitty. But it's also very compact, right? If you're doing stuff in the jungle, you can throw this on a big old jungle kit, you know, Vietnam style. There's a reason that these have been not only issued, but utilized for hundreds of years now, right? From the frontiersmen to modern times, hatchet's a nice little tool. Again, I wouldn't really call this a weapon per se, but you definitely could hurt somebody with this. But it's primarily for cutting down logs, building up your fighting position, right? You have a small little tree that you want to delete either in front of your position or you want to use to construct your position. Hatchet, right? You could definitely use it for cutting things, right? Large swaths of rope could be cut with this, but I'm not the biggest hatchet guy. But in a pinch, it definitely fits on a belt and can do your wood cutting things. But what I prefer much more than that hatchet is the axe. Bam, bam, the axe. We are running through these, wow. Anyway, the axe is, I think, one of the most important entrenchment tools, right? With a decent axe, this is the multi-purpose axe. You can get these online. They're somewhat expensive, but sometimes you find them in Army surplus stores or on Facebook Marketplace. Or you usually come with a shovel portion or a pick. I don't have the pick or the shovel, just the axe. This is what $20 on Facebook Marketplace will get you. This one happens to have a hard plastic handle. You can get an axe with a wooden handle, with fiberglass handle. I like the plastic because it doesn't splinter my hand and it doesn't expand and contract in the rain. Hefty item. This is, I mean, probably 10 or 15 pounds spread out, which isn't crazy, but if you're rucking 20 miles, you don't necessarily want that extra weight. It's a little bit awkward. You can definitely have it up in a ruck, but it's kind of annoying. But these are really handy if you have like a Polaris M-Razor or a little Jeep or some sort of little UTV utility vehicle, and you can drive that out to your position. Something like this, throw it in your Pioneer kit, and now you have the ability to delete decent sized trees, right? You can create timbers, and if you've dug a decent hole or have your guys digging a decent hole, you can pop back over there with the axe, cut some decent timbers and put them down, right? A lot of decently large logs are fairly bullet resistant, especially from shrapnel and handgun rounds. Like obviously it's not starting a 50 cal, but for decent small arms protection, timbers are fantastic. Cut them up and stack them like Lincoln logs, and this really gives you the ability to take out fairly large trees, right? Chainsaw would be preferable if you have the means for that, but this is something that you can carry with you, and it's maybe one of the most important and most overlooked pieces of an EA Dev kit. All right, here we have a larger shovel. This shovel, about waist height. Generally, that's what I consider a good size shovel for you, right? So if you're 6'7", your decent size shovel might not be mine, but I like a good T-handle. I like it to be plastic or metal, doesn't really matter. Big old end, much like the axe, you can get this wood, fiberglass, plastic, doesn't really matter. I generally prefer plastic. This one happens to be painted wood. But basically, right, this just allows you to do everything the E-Tool does, except actually good. I mean, look at that size difference. The amount of leverage you have with the longer handle and the amount of dirt you can move with this larger shovel head is just impeccable, right? One or two guys with these can create a decent fighting position in at least maybe double, maybe triple the speed of using a normal E-Tool. This does come with the downside of being rather large, but it's really not heavy for what it is. Is it something I'd take with me in the field most of the time? Probably not, right? Just because of its size, but I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing to have that on the back of an Alice Pack or something. And if, like I said with the axe, if you have a UTV, a little Jeep, any sort of vehicle, this is something that should be in a Pioneer kit. In fact, probably number one might be this. Might be the axe, might be this. Obviously this does what the E-Tool does, so the E-Tool with an axe might be preferable, but as someone who digs a lot of holes and doesn't really mind digging holes in the ground, this is my go-to weapon of choice. Yeah, fantastic piece of kit. Get yourself a decent sized shovel if you want to dig foxholes in defensive fighting positions. Not much more to say about that. This is the handsaw, right? Good stuff. Get yourself a good handsaw. This is low on the list for me just because the axe kind of does what this does, even if it is a little bit worse. These are really handy for dropping trees. You can be really precise. With the axe, you can make a mark with a Sharpie, but I mean, you're gonna have a variance of this and it's not a straight line. Whereas this, you say, well, I want this tree to be 2 rifle lengths or something. If you have a measuring stick or like something like that, that's cool. But really, we're gonna measure stuff in like shovels and rifle lengths. Cut it exactly there, and now you could have 5 timbers that are the same exact size for building up a position, right? Especially for things not too big, you know, up to a foot in diameter. Right about there. You can really cut stuff very precise with a decent handsaw. Sometimes these are a little bit expensive for nice ones, but I think it's definitely worth it. This is something that is definitely staying in the Pioneer kit, in the UTV or the little Jeep. I'm not gonna carry this with me. You cannot convince me to carry this on my person for any kind of patrol. But if you have, you know, a 3-day period to build up a nice fighting position, this is something you should have around. It's gonna be more precise than the axe, more wieldy, and it's not gonna exhaust you. Swinging an axe in the Georgia heat is exhausting. This, I can saw logs all day. And now I have sharp ends and nice building materials. So it's a luxury, but not a necessity. Go out and get one. If you have 20 or 30 bucks, you can get these at Lowe's, Home Depot, most hardware stores, just like most of this stuff. You don't need anything tactical. In fact, if there's a tactical axe or saw, it probably sucks. It's probably cringe, right? The people who know construction are Home Depot and Lowe's, right? Not everything has to be blacked out with a Punisher logo and, you know, optimized forward research, you know, buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. Just stop down at your local True Value, pick up a nice handsaw. It's gonna pay off. Here we have the Frisker, the Noble Yard Scissor. These actually are fairly easy to put in a back panel, and I have carried these with me on ops. I really like these for just cleaning stuff up, right? Whether it's in front of, behind, just on your construction site. Like if there was a bunch of trees or brush or little tall grass right here, and my buddies said, hey, we're digging a DFP right here, I would say, all right, too easy. We have the yard scissors, cut all around it. Or you're sitting here, you have a bush, and you're like, well, I can't really see my engagement area very well. We can delete branches pretty easy with the yard scissors. I would say anything, heck, you could probably go a little larger than thumb size even. Super lightweight, super easy to carry. Again, they're gonna have these at Lowe's. They have them at the BX in the hardware section. Heck, most grocery stores probably have these. I paid $16, I think. I've had them for like a year and a half. I use them in my yard here at home. I use them at work. Fantastic, overlooked item. If you really hate the orange, you could spray paint over it or tape it, but I just use them as is, and they seem to work well for me for cutting stuff. All right, this is the mallet. Not much to say about the mallet. I think the mallet gets overlooked. This is a rubber mallet. You can use these for working on vehicles. You can use these when your gun goes down, right? If you're a machine gunner, you should have a mallet anyway. Super lightweight, especially a rubber mallet. A rawhide mallet works too. You have a malfunction, tap it out, right? You want to put tent stakes in the ground to set up like a mast, right? For radio transmissions, tap it out. You have like a log or you have something you want broken or moved, tap it out. You have some nice things in the ground, you want to put some timbers to stack them up for your wall, tap that bugger out. Rubber mallet, not much to say. Go down, spend 12 bucks, get the rubber mallet, keep it in your ruck. Super handy item. All right, last but certainly not least is the Noble Machete, right? Machete's cool. Machete makes me look cool, right? I look like Black Ops 2. I'm like, I'm gonna get you. I got the machete. Machete, again, not really a weapon per se, but I wouldn't want to get cut up with one. This one's fairly dull, but you can get a machete, like a good machete, fairly cheap, right? SOG makes one. This one is no name brand, so you know it's good. Super standard stuff. You can wrap this in grippy tape if you want. You can Dremel your name into it. You can cut tall grass. You can through branches. If you're making a trail, right? Like, hey, we have 5 clicks and a bunch of it's through tall grass. Well, maybe bring a machete, especially if you're in like South America or Asia. That stuff gets crazy out there. And sometimes you just have to cut through bushes and keep rolling. Down here in Georgia, I love this, right? So we're in South Georgia, right by that Florida border. And I don't know if you've ever seen videos of the Everglades, but we get tall, ridiculous grass and bushes, and it's just awful. It's just terrible, really. So get yourself a machete. It looks badass, goes into a ruck super easy. You could throw it on your belt, but it's a little, you know, cringe, a little bit big, a little bit rolling around. But yeah, the machete, fairly cheap, super handy for eliminating grass. I use it if you need extra like stuff to put on top of your DFP. Go out there, cut down some grass, or you just want to make some firing lanes, and they look badass. 10 out of 10, would recommend. Go down to Lowe's, go down to True Value, Ace Hardware, something, get a machete. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that video. That was a quick one. It is insanely hot out here. Every time I've picked up an item, I've just about burnt myself, and I am running out of fluids. I'm gonna go in and drink some water, and if you liked it, leave it a like. If you disliked it, give it a dislike, and get out there and get some freaking tools.